component piece for you. It's going to be based on 5 components. I'm calling this the High Rock necklace, and it's component based, so you can actually take these components, make bracelet, earrings, and kind of change it up from there. For my example piece, I used all the same color in the jet bronze in the IrisDuos as well as the Ava beads, and then the Duracoat galvanized gold in 11 and 15s. If you need any of the materials to make this along with me, below the video there is the date stamp which says when the video was published. Below that there's a little down arrow or a show more button, and that'll give you links to the different products that we are going to be using to do this High Rock necklace. For the necklace itself, I'm going to be making 5 components. So here are 3. I'm going to be making 2 of these smaller components and 3 larger components. Instead of the jet bronze color, I'm doing a play on blues. So I'm using a bunch of different colors of blues. For each of the smaller components, you're going to be using 8 of your IrisDuo beads. So depending on how many components you want to make and how full you want to make your High Rock necklace, you will need 8 per component. For the larger component, you're also using 8 of the IrisDuos, and then we're adding on 2 of the Ava beads. I'm going to be using the metallic aqua, the pastel petrol in the IrisDuo, and then for my Ava beads, I'm using the metallic sea blue color. To add the links together and add these components together, I'll be using some wire guards. Because I'm going to be making 5 components, I'm going to need 10 of my wire guards. In addition to that, I have 10 jump rings here, and these are just a 4 or 5 millimeter jump ring, art wire jump ring that I'll be using to connect the components together. Also, I have a small piece of chain for the back of the necklace as we're working with it to have that be finished, and a little lobster clasp to go along with it. In between the IrisDuos and the Avas, we're going to be using 15 OC beads and 11 OC beads towards the middle. Instead of doing the gold, we are switching again to that silver color, so I'm using the Duracoat galvanized silver in the 15 O's. For the 11 O's, I have the Miyuki crystal silver rainbow, which is a check coating on the Miyuki bead, and that's going to be in the middle of our little components here. The whole thing is going to be strung on a size 12 needle with 0.006 wildfire thread, and I'm using the gray color since I'm using silver and blue. It should blend in really, really nicely and you will not see it. You also want to have a nice workable surface to work on, a nice clean surface, and I like to have a pliers handy, either needle nose or wide jaw pliers, to flatten out the end of my thread to make it really easy to thread the needle onto the wildfire thread. You may also want to have a thread burner or a thread zap handy to burn the ends of your thread, especially because these are component pieces and you will have thread towards the back of each individual one. To get started, I'm going to show you how to do the simple component and then show you how we added on and added extra seed beads to make the more complicated component. So again, I'm going to be doing this in the blue colors. I'm going to get 5 feet of my wildfire thread onto my needle, and I'm going to get ready to begin with 8 of my IrisDuos. I'm going to be doing 4 of the metallic aqua and 4 of the petrol for each of my smaller components. So go ahead and get that ready. You'll use less than 5 feet, but then you have enough for your second component right on there. To begin our component, I have my 5 feet of beading thread on my needle, and I'm going to begin by doing the center of this first component. The center is going to be my metallic aqua color, and the petrol will be those outer 4 then. In the middle is the only place that I use 11 seed beads. On the outer edge, I'm using the 15 seed beads. To begin, I want to face and make sure that the IrisDuos are all sitting face up. They have a little bit of a bump to them or a little bit of a curvature towards them, and they're flat on one side. So I'm going to make sure that they're all sitting with that bump facing up. I'm going to begin by just holding the end of my thread here and add an IrisDuo with an 11 between each IrisDuo at the start. As I'm adding the IrisDuos, I want to make sure that they are all sitting the exact same way. I'm sewing through the bottom hole of the 4 as they're sitting with the bulge facing up. From here, the 11 seed bead goes on after each one. So you're going to start with an IrisDuo and end with an 11 seed bead. let those IrisDuos and seed beads drop down until you have about an inch left on your thread. Simply tie an overhand knot. And make it nice and tight to pull the thread in. If you need to, my hands are really dry from making applesauce and kind of cleaning the dishes and stuff as we were canning. So if you need to, you can pull with the pliers. I have lotion on my hands and trying to get them recovered. So if you need to, pull with the pliers to get that knot nice and tight. Once you have that nice kind of floral look, you're going to take your thread and your needle and sew through an IrisDuo, an 11, and an IrisDuo. This is just to get your thread reinforced in that loop and away from that knot. So you have the knot on one side and the thread coming out basically on the other side. From here, we're going to step down to the second hole of that same IrisDuo. The thread's coming out towards the top of the screen here, and the needle's going to go in towards the bottom of the screen. A tiny bit of thread is going to be exposed on the outside of that IrisDuo. From here, we are going to be adding a 15-0 between each of our IrisDuos that we add on the outer row here. So on the outer row here, we are adding a 15, an IrisDuo, and then a 15. When you add your IrisDuos, you want to make sure that they are also going to face up, going through the inner hole. So you're going to add your IrisDuo. Make sure that that IrisDuo, when you look at it and you put your piece down, is facing so it's going through the first hole with that curvature towards the top, just like the other IrisDuos. Add another 15 and sew through, adding that IrisDuo in between. Continuing on, you're going to add a series of 15 IrisDuo 15, going through the second hole of those starter 4 IrisDuo beads. You'll notice that this does make and start a tiny bit of curvature on the component. So it does sit raised a tiny little bit. That's why I named it the high rock piece, because it does sit a little bit up. As I add the fourth and final IrisDuo in place, I'm going to sew through that first IrisDuo that my thread was coming out of, as well as the first 15-0 and the first IrisDuo in the petrol color. When I do that, I give a nice tight pull, and again, that raises the middle a tiny bit. Continue to reinforce this by sewing through the next 15, the next IrisDuo, the next 15, and then coming out the base hole of the petrol IrisDuo along the bottom here. And then you're going to do a nice tight pull to get that second row in. Once that second row is in place and that's sitting up a little bit recessed, we're going to go around and decorate with our 15 O's along the sides of the outer petrol beads. Going and coming out that bottom hole of that petrol bead, we're going to go to the top hole of that same petrol bead. Just like we did when we did the aqua 4 in the middle, we're going to step up to the second hole, which is going to expose a little bit of thread on the outer edge. My thread is coming out the bottom of that petrol hole, and we are going to go to the top. What I want to do as I step up is actually decorate the side by adding in 4 of my 15-0 seed beads. And then I'm going to step up the side. Those 4 15-0s then will just sit along the side of that IrisDuo. I'm just going to get my tail out of the way here and pull those nice and tight. You can see those 4 just kind of sit right in line. Next, I'm going to add 4 more 15s, and I'm going to sew them through the 15 next to that IrisDuo, the IrisDuo through the second hole of the aqua, and out the 15 before the next petrol bead. Give a nice tight yank, and now again 4 more 15s get added. So I'm going to add 4 15s, go from that 15-0 at the bottom next to the bottom hole of the petrol to the top hole of that petrol, Give a nice tight pull. 4 more get added on when you're coming out that second hole along the top. And again, go into the 15. And then that second hole of the aqua and the 15. Give a nice tight pull. So you can see those 4 seed beads are decorating right along the side. So again, I'm going to continue them with the next 2 beads, doing the same thing, adding the 4 seed beads, going into the second hole, adding 4 more seed beads after coming out that second hole, and going into the next grouping of 15 IrisDuo 15. So I've got 1 more round to go, adding those 15s on. And I like the darker IrisDuo sitting along the bottom there. Kind of adds that depth and dimension to the peak. 4 more go on. And I'm going to sew again through the 15, the IrisDuo, and the 15 on the other side, back to the start. Get that tail out of the way and give a nice tight pull. At this point, basically the component is finished. You can then take it and add a jump ring, add it to the earring. What I'm going to be doing actually is adding 2 of my wire guards onto the very edges of the project. To do so, I'm going to take the thread and the needle up through those first 4 15s that I added on the very first side of the IrisDuo. Add 3 more 15s, then your wire guard, going through that first little hole of the wire guard, going down the U shape of the wire guard and out the bottom, making sure that thread sits in that little channel of the guard. 3 more seed beads, and then into those 4 seed beads along the edge and out. When I pull this, then I'm going to make sure again that that thread stays in that wire guard. Give a nice tight pull. And you'll see that right along the edge now. This is also the way if you would want to hang it down from an earring. This is what I would suggest. I think it gives a nice finished look. If you want it to sit a little bit closer to the wire guard or to the IrisDuo, you can also do 2 seed beads instead of 3. From here, I'm going to reinforce the edge by getting to the opposite side and going through the 15s and the seed beads, just like we did when we were adding the seed beads. Go up along the side here, going through the 15s that are already there. Clear across to the other side. So I'm just spinning around, sewing through that outer edge that we added to get to the other side, which is going to allow me to add a wire guard on the other side. If you are doing an earring, you can bring the wire and the needle to the back of the project and just tie off, because you don't need a wire guard at the top and the bottom. You just need it on one side, unless you're hanging another bead from the bottom. So here I am on the opposite corner. I'm going to go in now and repeat 3 seed beads, wire guard through the base of it, push it down, go through the other hole of the wire guard, getting it a little bit closer then. 3 more seed beads get added, and down through those 4 beads along the side. As I'm pulling, I want to make sure that the thread stays in that little channel, so I do it nice and easy there. And then I'm going to take the thread through the IrisDuo and the 15s along the sides, just like if I'm reinforcing. Coming out the 15 then, I'm going to sew through the next IrisDuo and 15, sew through the outer hole of that blue IrisDuo and come on out. From here then I'm going to step down. So I'm in the outer hole of the aqua IrisDuo. I'm going to step to the inner hole of the IrisDuo. Taking my thread and needle then, I'll go to the back of the project, not sewing through anywhere, just literally taking the needle towards the back. Flipping it over then, I'm going to sew around kind of that opening center area until my threads are coming out the same place and I can tie these two thread ends together. Once I'm done that, I have this first component finish and my first link done. I'm going to repeat and do a whole nother component this exact same way. As I build the next second side components, you can see these will be going up the side. I'm adding an ava bead to the actual sides of the IrisDuos. To do so, we're adding the ava beads and then adding the wire guards in as we do it. When I'm coming out my very first bead, just like I did on the other side, where I added the 3 beads and then the wire guard and 3 beads and then came back down. Instead of adding the wire guard right away, I'm going to add an ava bead. So I add 1/15 onto my needle. Then you're going to go through an ava bead from the inner hole, bottom hole, towards the outer hole. From there, add 5 15s onto your needle and go from the outer bottom hole to the upper top hole of the ava bead. Give a nice tight yank, add 3 more 15s, and then pick up your wire guard. Go through that top hole of the wire guard. When coming out then of that wire guard, I'm going to make sure that the wire stays in that U channel. Come down the other side of the wire guard, add 3 more 15s onto my needle, and then go to the other side of the ava bead to that top hole and go back towards the first side where you're starting out. Make sure the wire stays in the loop. See how mine kind of wants to jump there? I'm going to push it in, pulling it up a little bit, making sure it stays in there, and there we go. Now give a nice tight yank. From here, add 5 more seed beads. And then sew back through the bottom hole of that same ava bead, coming out towards the IrisDuo. Add 1 more 1501, and then sew through that top hole of the IrisDuo. That completes how you put on the IrisDuos while accompanying the actual wire guards. So then these will link together with some jump rings as they create the chain of the necklace. So I have 3 components made. I'm going to make 1 more component exactly like this, and then I'll show you how I'm going to make my middle component. The middle component is going to be done the exact same way, but instead of doing wire guards on the sides, we're going to do wire guards coming out the top of one of our ava beads. The ava beads are going to sit also on all 4 corners of the original component design. I have the other components all finished up, and now what I'm going to be doing is the middle component. So you can, if you want, do the middle component the exact same as one of the side components or kind of build on. What I wanted to do was build on even more avas around the edge, having it be a complete grouping of 4. So I'm back to the starting position basically here of the original easy ones before I added on my wire guard. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding ava beads at every single increment. On the 4th and final ava bead, rather than adding a wire guard at the top of the ava bead, we're going to add wire guards at the side. That's going to help it when we actually connect to that section, that the actual links on the side and the side components will hang correctly and link onto the side. So to start out, just like I showed in the last clip, we're going to be adding in 1 seed bead, our ava bead, 5 seed beads along the side, through the top hole of the ava bead, 3 avas, And instead of doing the wire guard, we're going to do an additional 3 15s and around. So as we swing around the Ava beads, there'll be 9 beads on total. So to show you, we have 1 15 on my needle after coming out one of my IrisDuos. I have my Ava on, 5 Ava bead, or 5 15s rather, go on to decorate the side of the Ava bead. Jump from the bottom hole to the top hole of the Ava bead. When I'm out the top hole here, I want to decorate this middle section. So I'm going to add 9 15s. So around to the back to the top hole of the Ava bead on the other side. So this way it will be decorating the top there. Give a nice tight pull. Again, 5 more beads go on through the bottom hole there of the Ava bead. So basically just spinning around in a circle around the Avas. Another 15 gets added, and I sew back through that same IrisDuo bead. And then give a nice tight pull to get rid of any extra thread. What I'm going to do now to curve this, or to straighten this out, is go back through the 15 in the Ava, come out the side of the Ava there, and as I come out the side of the Ava bead, what I want to do is go through the 15s along the side, those 5 15s. I'm going to go through the 9 15s here at the top, and then down through the 5 on the other side. So I'm linking onto all of these seed beads along the outer edge. And what that's going to do is just make the connection there of the seed beads nice and uniform. So that way it looks like they're hugging the Ava rather than kind of looping around the Ava. So there you see it. From there, go back through the Ava, the 15, and the IrisDuo. I'm going to go down through the beads along the side here, those 5 15s that we put in originally, through the 15-0 right next to the metallic aqua, and then out that before going through the IrisDuo. When I come out then, I'm going to use this opportunity to decorate the sides of the actual IrisDuo as well. So I'm going to add 5 15s, skip over the IrisDuo, and then go up along the side through that 15 there and up through those 4 beads along the side. Those seed beads then will just lay right on the side there of that little IrisDuo. As you come out the top here then, sewing through that top hole of the IrisDuo, you're going to get ready to add your next Ava bead. So you're going to repeat that same process 2 more times, adding in another Ava bead, and then as we get to the top Ava bead here, I'll show you how we're going to attach our wire guards. So as I go in now and add my last Ava bead, along the side, I'm going to add 2 15s, then my wire guard up along the side, down the wire guard on the other side, and then as I'm coming down the other side, 2 more 15s go on. Making sure that that thread is still in that wire guard loop then, go through the top hole of the Ava, just like we've been doing. And then along the top here, we'll add 8 beads. Along that top, then spin back down around, just like we've been doing. So the only thing that's changing is right along the sides here. We are adding our 2 15s, then our wire guard, down the wire guard, on the other side, and it's a little hard to see, these little tiny things here. 2 more seed beads go on, back into the bottom hole of the Ava bead, giving a nice tight pull, so it kind of has that almost like Mickey Mouse ear look. Another 15 goes on, and then I'm going to reinforce this whole section here, going back through the IrisDuo, giving a nice tight yank, making sure that the thread is still in those wire guards. And I'm going to then retrace my thread through those seed beads, up along the seed beads, down the wire guards, and come out the other side, adding my last 5 seed beads along this last IrisDuo. Once those 5 seed beads are added, then I am just going to tie off the thread, just like we did on the component pieces, tying off and then burning down the end. So I've gone through and burned down all the thread edges, and now all I'm doing is opening up my jump rings, connecting on to one of the wire guards, making sure that their component pieces are facing up, catching onto another wire guard, taking 2 pairs of pliers, oops, and without dropping it, you can see it there on the screen. And the most important thing to make sure is that these links are shut nice and tightly, and that also the links are facing, or the components are facing the same direction. So I'm going to go in now and close up my jump ring. And there I have my first 2 components on, and I'm going to add with my jump rings my next 2 components here, opening that up by sliding to the side, adding 1 component on that side, making sure it faces the same way, adding the next component onto that jump ring, and then closing up that jump ring. Closing it up by taking the 2 pliers and twisting that jump ring back to its original shape. There I have my next link on my necklace. From here I'm going to link on the next one, and then I'll add links on the outer edges here also to connect to my chain. After you have all your jump rings closed, you link onto the chain, and then I just added a jump ring and a lobster to each side with the jump rings as well. And I go back through after I'm done the piece and make sure that those jump rings are nice and flushly cut. Make sure and do a double check that your thread edges are nicely burned down and that your final piece and final project has that look of perfection that you're going for. So the fun thing with this component piece is you really can go all different ways. You can do just the drop. You can do just the side beads. You can do just the top. You could do these links as a whole necklace, just doing the side links. You can continue on and do more drops and really have fun. I like component pieces, and I like the use of the wire guards here in order to make it have that nice finished look. It'll hang nicely, and it shouldn't flip over on you as you're wearing it as well. Again, if you want the materials to do this fun high rock necklace, you can go back to the beginning of the video where I listed out the materials, or have that little show more button underneath the published date of the video. You can also stay connected with me by subscribing to this YouTube channel, as well as checking us out at PotomacBeads.com and shopping for me online there. You can also check us out on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest. Also, if you get a chance, you can join our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. There is a wonderful interactive group of people that love to make jewelry, share design ideas, share inspiration, and really just are a great group of people. As always, too, I thank you for watching, and have fun if you get a chance to make this fun component high rock necklace.